Welcome to Aging Out Loud, the official podcast of the New York City Department for the Aging. I'm your host, Lorraine Cortés-Vázquez. Here we talk about real experiences of aging, about growing older in New York City, and we explore how New York City is evolving to become an age-inclusive city. So I'm joined by a colleague, a friend, someone that I admire, Commissioner Louis Molina, who is the commissioner for DCAS. I'm going to try to remember what it stands for.
Department of Citywide Administrative Services.
The Department of Citywide Administrative Services. When I think about the department, people know like fragments of that department, and they have no idea how broad this portfolio is. So I would love for you to introduce not only yourself, but also DCAS to our audience.
So I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm honored to also be the seventh commissioner of the DCAS. And DCAS plays a really important role in supporting all of the mayoral agencies as well as city boards to be able to accomplish their core mission. We're known for giving exams, but we're so much more than that. In addition to giving the civil service exams, we manage the entire city's civil service system, which allows for our city to really think forward about how we're inclusive for all ages in New York City. We manage the city's vehicle fleet, which is about 28,000 strong. We manage the city's procurement, which purchases about $1.3 billion of goods and services every year. We manage the city's energy, so that's everything from paying electric bills to coming up with clean energy solutions to lower our greenhouse gas emissions for the city. And then we manage all of the city's real estate portfolio. That includes about 55 city buildings that we directly manage, in addition to another 15, 16 million square feet of commercial real estate space, which the city leases for city agencies. So we do a lot at DCAS, and we touch every agency in the city.
It's amazing to me. I really don't know that many city officials and us and your colleagues, know the vast array of services that you are responsible for. You come to this job with a lot of experiences, and I value that they are a mix of experiences. So before that, you were a public servant, you were a parole officer. You were one of New York City's finest. Then you went on to lead government agencies. But one of the things that you've been known for is modernizing agencies, changing their systems, expanding access to opportunities. That we're going to talk a little bit about further, because I think the way that you've been very inclusive to bring a new crop of people into city service in a very innovative way. And then you've challenged some norms. So you've been a change agent. And with that same kind of ingenuity and innovation comes some controversy. And you had the grace and the gift of being the correctional officer, the lead correctional officer for the city when you were a commissioner of Rikers Island and Commissioner. What is Department of Corrections?
Department of Corrections.
Department of Correction. What led you to become the kind of leader that can see something and say, this could be better, and I'm going to make these things better?
I think it's a combination of a few things. I think it's a combination of my lived experiences. I'm a Latino kid from the Bronx. I was very blessed. I had both my mom and my dad in my life, my mother's parents in my life. A lot of kids I grew up with didn't have that. But we were not without our challenges, despite us having sort of a whole family unit. And then I wanted to go to college. I was the first in my family to attend college. And I had friends whose other parents knew how to navigate through that process. My parents didn't go, so they didn't know how to really shepherd me through that. But I knew I wanted to go deep down inside, so I joined the military. I joined the Marines because my dad was in the Marine Corps. So I just sort of followed in that track because it was what I grew up listening about. And the NYPD called me, so I came back home to New York City after living away for about almost 10 years. I lived in Hawaii for almost 10 years, where my wife and I met. And seeing things that I saw at that point in time in policing, I felt that there was a better way of doing business, of really supporting communities. Not that you don't want to hold people accountable, but public safety is a community effort, right? It can't just be one side or the police side. So, I started giving a lot of thought and realizing how quickly the power of really change lies within the commissioners of agencies. I learned that the city charter gives agency commissioners a lot of power The state constitution does the same thing. And if you want to bring about change within government, then the most important position is that of commissioner. So I made the decision around 2008 to go back to school, to get myself prepared to understand sort of the business of government. And in that process began the journey of being considered not only a thought leader, but getting the opportunity to lead an agency one day.
The fascinating piece for me in this job that you have now is how you can influence who will serve the city, who will be the public servant, how they enter the city, and then how they're served while they are serving the public. Like, how do you start thinking about what are going to be the building blocks so that I can get this city's workforce to be more reflective of this city, but also how do I make it so that we enable them to succeed while they're in there?
We have an amazing team at DCAS and all of we call them these different divisions, we call lines of service. And human capital touches that the most. And this work had started before I got there with Dawn Pennock, the prior commissioner. And under a decision that Mayor Adams made, he wanted to make sure that minimum qualification requirements that we were asking for jobs for people to do, that they actually met what was required to do the job, right? And that we should not only value when we need to academic credentialing for certain professional type technical jobs, but also not alienate a sector of the population that brings lived experiences from either prior positions or other things that they might have done. And how do we value that to get them qualified to compete, to be given consideration? Now, 83% of the jobs in the city are given by some sort of exam, whether that's a multiple choice or education and experience exam. But we have a lot of other jobs in the thousands that don't go through that process. So we need to help agencies really rethink what are the minimum qualifications you need, while at the same time investing in a candidate so that you can help that candidate become successful. And then we have to recognize that the work has changed over the years. So, my mom worked at Macy's for like 25 years in Parkchester, where I grew up in the Bronx. And whether we're talking about Macy's or we're talking about a city agency, it's not common today that someone starts off at an agency and 20, 30 years later, they're retiring from that same agency. We have a generation of workers today that want more portability and opportunity. So it's okay, and we have to be welcoming of the agility that workers want to work in different spaces. And you can still have a flourishing career with the city, even if you work at 5 or 6 different agencies. What can we do as DCAS to help that agency support career planning so that they can recruit for the best, keep the best, but as they're investing in people, it's okay to say a person can move on in a different direction and have a pipeline of talent that's coming to serve New Yorkers. So, we think about that through our learning and development at Human Capital, because we provide a lot of trainings across the city's entire ecosystem. When we think about what do workers need. So, I can share with you during our conversation today about a program we instituted to help city workers that didn't have high school equivalency, and how we made the conscious decision to say that can't be okay. If a person wants to have a career, we need to think about all the barriers that prevent them from doing that. And that's the job that we do at DCAS.
As a CUNY trustee, and a lifelong learner, I value that sentiment that you just shared, which is I'm going to bring in people knowing what their life experiences are, but also recognizing that pre-qualifications are diverse for people. And so let's honor that. What is motivating you and your team to think that way?
So, I have a mentoring management style. That's just how I lead. And I engage with everyone in an organization, especially one that I'm leading. And it's important to hear from them, how do they perceive what support looks like for them to be successful, not only in the job that they were hired to do, but thinking how they can be successful in a career spanning decades. And when I was touring all of our facilities, I would engage with our custodial staff. And for me, when I talked with them, regardless of the age of the employee, it fascinated me that some of them were just felt that they had no other options other than the option that was presented for them in doing what they did, which is in most cases, cleaning and taking care of our buildings. I wanted to learn, why did they think other opportunities were closed off from them? And I learned later on when I was trying to look at the data of this at this point, what came out of that, the common thread was they didn't have high school equivalency, never finished high school. And the custodial position is one of the positions where you don't need a high school equivalency. And there were other things that they wanted to do in life, but never had the opportunity to go back to school. Now, the other challenge is that their compensation levels are modest. And because of that, going back to school at night, because of either working a second job, childcare, and things like that, that was not possible. So we wanted to be intentional in truly solving this issue. So I brought my executive team together and I just said, listen, my goal is that if somebody wants to pursue the high school equivalency, how do we support that? And I worked with all of their managers to determine what day of the week had the least amount of workload for them. And then we worked with Metropolitan College, it happened to be, because they provided the most flexibility, where for the 8 hours of their day, 1 day a week, instead of going to their work site, they go to Metropolitan College. And depending on where they are academically, after 12 or 18 months, they'll have the high school equivalency and they'll have 27 college credits, which opens the door for them for thousands of job opportunities within the city alone. And I think you have to be intentional about these things if you want to actually make a difference in people's lives. And half of the pilot class is between the age of 53 and 64.
Oh.
So, for older employees, it was an opportunity to say, what opportunities professionally can I pursue if you still want to stay in the workplace? But being able to help your grandkids with their homework is an amazing thing, right? So you get that too.
Yeah. There's nothing like leading and learning from lived experiences and from the heart, right? The demographics are changing.
Yep.
Employers are going to rely more and more on older workers. How can you see some of those programs either being morphed into or being transitioned for an older workforce?
Yeah, so no, that's a great question. So one is, we're in a transitionary period where technology is advancing every day. And we constantly have to think about, and this is not specifically an older workforce issue, because I think we have a lot of middle-aged persons that also have to be upskilled as well. And we have to bring everybody along in that process. So, in our learning and development division, which is under human capital also, we have things from basic software applications that we help people understand better. So they're not age specific, but I think it speaks to your point to make sure that we have a diversity of ages and a diversity of different skill levels that are being trained in the basics, whether it's how to use Word, how to use Excel, how to use other applications that may be commonplace for younger individuals that grew up in the Internet of Things. The other value is for those that have been in the workforce, especially with our city for 20 or 30 years, as they're thinking about the next chapter of their life, you need some things to do after a while, right? It's hard to just stay home and not have much going on. So I'm a big supporter of the Silver Stars program. And I think what's great about the Silver Stars program, it allows retirees to continue to get their pension benefit, but also get additional income to help them sort of those extra expenses in life that you may take for granted when you're working, but that you realize as you get older, you have a different income coming in and that little extra money helps. But the biggest value, both of those that are working, that are older, and those that are retired coming back into the workforce, is that history needs a seat at the table so that you don't repeat the mistakes of the past. And whether we're talking about, whether it's a pandemic or starting a new initiative, there may have been a point in time where this had been attempted before, and absent speaking to individuals that lived through that moment of time, you will probably make the same mistakes of why it wasn't successful prior. So I think when we think about big initiatives, when we're thinking about programmatic interventions, history should have a seat at the table, and that sort of corporate memory, those lived experiences of persons that came before us are priceless.
Yeah, one of the things I learned was in terms of innovation, right, and trying things is wash, rinse, and repeat.
Yep.
because at some point the timing may have not been right.
Mhm.
But now the conditions are such that it is totally doable now. When we started with your predecessor, we started looking at DEI. One of the things that we were doing with them was like, okay, in your DEI portfolio, in all of your discrimination work,
Mhm.
how is ageism being looked at? And we were able to present to them and have some conversations about ageism and how to include it.
I think what's important is some of the training you're speaking about is mandated by local law, right? So
Right.
like everybody matters training. And part of that is about addressing issues of making sure that we're age inclusive. We also have unconscious bias training, which is also important. We provide training and learning and development on how to manage a multi-generational workforce, right? Which is not easy for everyone. We have to train individuals to be conscious of how do you help everyone on your team be successful.
When we think about recruitment, how are we preparing as a city and as an agency as this demographic changes? You know, we're going to have the older adult pool is going to get larger. How are we going to do, you know, are we thinking about that outreach, that training, and that really application process that may also be
In
different?
fiscal year 2024, we had a milestone of like 1.3 million job applications coming into the city system. And in fiscal year 25, through building on those efforts, we've increased that number to over 1.7 million.
Wow.
So we are reaching more people with opportunities to come into the city service. And again, there's a mix because people take exams and some people have other jobs where it's not an exam process. So I think understanding how where workers are at and what their user experience is important. We're constantly thinking about this. We do surveys to get feedback from individuals' experiences. We also evaluate orientation. How you orient someone into city service is important too, to make sure they know all of the benefits that are available to them to support them when they might have personal challenges. And we don't want your personal challenges to impact your professional growth. How do we help employees deal with that issue?
We have a program that every new employee gets assigned to someone, and they're your welcome wagon for 6 weeks.
Wow. Okay, great.
And I mean, and it's simple things like what's the code of the bathroom, you know, like the essential ones. But it's also, you know, like what's the culture here? You know, how do you manage up? How do you manage down? Who are the key influences that if you want to get this stuff done quickly, that you need to process? And we weren't able to pull that off if it weren't for the support we got from DCAS. Now, I want to go back to Silver Stars. Do you have Silver Stars people on your team?
We do. And I've engaged with a number of Silver Star employees just to kind of, how things go. And, sometimes I see them for a few months and then they kind of disappear. And so I'll email them like, where are you at? And they're like, oh, I reached my maximum. I'm back home. It's the summer. I'm enjoying my time. I'll be back after Labor Day. It's been a great program. And I've been recently thinking a lot about what are other areas outside of the traditional job that some of the Silver Stars have done where they can be a significant added value to the city's workforce. And I was talking with our first Deputy Commissioner, Carolina Chavez, and other members of the executive team, because we're hoping to embark on childcare for city employees. And we're really thinking about how can we support parents that are in the city's workforce. And that way, especially single parents are not making tough decisions or choices between being able to care for their child and being able to have a really good professional career. That could be a place for Silver Star, right? Where, if those, whether you're a retired school teacher maybe, or retired public health professional, or someone who just likes being around kids, could there be a space for Silver Stars in places that we're not thinking, right? And I think a lot of times we think about Silver Stars and we think, how can they continue to support the work that they did and they were working full time? But there's other areas within an agency where they can provide a lot of value. And maybe the child care solution could be one of them.
As we're coming to a close, I'm going to ask you the fun questions.
Okay.
So what do you do for fun?
Oh, so I'm a runner. So
that's fun.
So I enjoy it. It helps my mental health. So I go running and cycling. I like reading a lot. So I read like, biographies of people and stuff like that. I love to go out and eat. So my wife and I eat out probably more than we should, but we're helping the local economy. So that's always a good thing.
Right.
So,
And you have probably a clean, beautiful kitchen.
yeah. So those are the types of things I do for fun. So we're pretty active.
If you were to tell somebody, the young Louis Molina, this is who I think I'm going to be, how would you coach him to be where you would want him to be today?
Oh, wow. That's tough. So, when I interact with a lot of younger persons today, they often ask me for guidance and, what was the biggest thing that I think that helped you? And I think, well, one, because I joined the military to get college money, obviously I had to move out of the nest, so to speak. And not everybody's going to do that, right? But I tell young people that you should not geographically eliminate opportunities that may be before you. And I think too often enough, young people might want to pursue a path, but because they can't pursue that path and where they grew up, they let it go. And there are times where you can pursue it, but you might have to move to another city in order to do so, for whatever reason. And the other thing is if somebody believes you can accomplish and do something, then take their word for it because they're giving you a chance and an opportunity. So I could have never dreamt where I am today for myself when I think about my younger self. But I always had the ambition and drive to want to have some impact in the world. So when I think about when I joined the military at that time in 1991, there were foreign challenges going on at that time. We had the first Gulf War at that point. Fortunately, I didn't have to go to combat, but it was not an easy time to join the military at that time. But I think for me, I wanted my life to matter, and that was one way of that, having an impact on my decision to do that. And then going to college and finishing college, again, wanted to be a thought leader and wanted all the sacrifices my grandparents, my parents made for me in the position to be able to do that and pursue that. I think it was what kept me going and has opened up opportunities for me. So I try to play it forward, and whatever young people, older persons, whoever asks me for guidance, I'm blessed to be able to lean in and rely on a life of experiences that, probably the majority of people didn't have. And hopefully if I can help others pursue their dreams in that way, then I'm always happy to do that.
Molina, it's been an honor to get this Bronx boy who came to us via Hawaii back to New York and everything in between to be a partner in this city and to be a partner in an agency that's key to the city, and it shapes the culture of the city and it shapes the public's image of the city. So I'm going to say to you, thank you very much. So keep aging wonderfully.
I will.
Make this city a city where we can all thrive. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Lorraine Cortés-Vázquez. See you at our next podcast, Aging Out Loud.